Hello YouTube, welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks since my last video because this time last week I was on a hen do in Croatia. It was me and some of my closest friends. We were having the absolute time of our lives, beach clubs, boat trips, all the fun stuff. And it was very unfitnessy, which is exactly what you need every now and again. But we are now back in London and it is very much business as usual. And today I wanted to talk to you about metabolism as a topic and how the messaging around metabolism at the moment is pretty crazy. It seems to be one of those buzz themes that's doing the rounds at the moment, a bit like cortisol or blood sugar spikes or hormonal imbalances, all of these really complex issues that people are essentially trying to sell you a supplement on or sell you a training program on. And I guess I wanted to start with that. Certainly for me, it seems to be everywhere on the algorithm around hacking your metabolism through fat burning teas or herbal waters, some kind of mystery pill, or like a metabolic reset program. All of this stuff suggests that your metabolism is something you can break and that there's this one simple thing you can do to fix it. I personally think these messages are quite unhelpful because it leads you to think that your body is in some way broken, when actually, particularly when it comes to metabolism, it's responding in exactly the way it's supposed to. Often we just need to learn how to implement things that are going to help support our metabolic health in the long term. And that's exactly what I'm going to dig into today. Let's start with what your metabolism actually is in really simple terms. It's basically the sum of all of the processes in your body that turn what you eat and drink into energy. And it's how your body keeps you alive. Breathing, digesting food, moving, thinking, even sleeping. I think people often revert to thinking about metabolism as just burning calories. But really we want to think about this as your body working 24/7 to give you the energy that you need to function in everyday life. When we think about our metabolism, it's broken down into 4 main categories. The biggest one is our basal metabolic rate. And this is the section that people will often think of as, I've just got a slow metabolism, or my metabolism has just slowed right down since I've gotten older. This is the bit that is largely determined by genetics. We can influence it a little bit, I'll come onto that in a minute, but largely when it comes to BMR, you've kind of got what you've got. BMR is by far the biggest portion of your overall metabolism. And this is the bit that really is just your body keeping you alive. It's your organ function, your breathing, your heartbeat. The majority of the calories that you burn in a day comes from this section. The other 3 sections are actually pretty variable based on your lifestyle choices, meaning you can have an impact on them, which is great news if you're someone who feels like their metabolism is slow. So we'll go from largest to smallest. The biggest chunk is our NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or just NEAT is fine. This is any and all movement outside of scheduled exercise. Me talking with my hands right now, fidgeting, getting up and going to the loo, answering the door, emptying the dishwasher, picking up your kids off the floor, walking up the stairs, carrying your shopping. The list goes on. Then we've got the thermic effect of food, or TEF. When you think about eating and digesting food, it's a bodily process that requires energy. And it takes up a decent portion of that whole pie, roughly 10%. And yes, you can impact how much energy your body is needing to use depending on the food that you choose to eat. Again, more on this later. And lastly, we've got your exercise activity thermogenesis, or EAT. This is your gym session, your 5K run, your spin class, your scheduled exercise. This is actually the smallest part of the entire energy expenditure circle. Now onto the good bit. How do we boost each element of our metabolic health? Starting with BMR, roughly 60 to 70% of your overall energy expenditure, a big chunk. Let's remove the part that's down to genetics. And in reality, we simply don't know, or there's no easy way to tell how much of this section you're genetically predisposed to and how much of it we can manipulate. But it's safe to say we want to pay attention to the things we can do to keep this section as strong as possible. Here are some evidence-based strategies for boosting your BMR. Number 1, increase your muscle mass. You've got to do that through resistance training. This is because muscle tissue is metabolically active, meaning it requires energy just to exist, whereas fat tissue is not metabolically active. It requires no energy to support it. The more lean mass you have, or muscle, the more energy your body burns at rest. You're also going to want to pay attention to your sleep. Poor sleep can really affect your hunger hormones, meaning that you feel more hungry and less full. Not ideal if you're someone who has a body composition goal. And you're going to want to avoid long-term chronic dieting. I think this is where the kind of misunderstanding of I've broken my metabolism through dieting comes from. When you go through a long period of dieting, your body will down-regulate. And this is actually really smart and something you don't want to stop, because really it's a natural response to not getting enough fuel. Your body's really smart. You will inadvertently stop fidgeting. You'll find more opportunities to sit down. In severe cases, you may lose your period. It's a non-essential life function, and therefore your body's working really hard to protect you from it. All of this makes sense in a survival situation, but it's not something we want to encourage happening through that long-term and really restrictive dieting. The other problem with that is if you're someone who's prone to kind of yo-yo dieting, you lose a significant amount of weight over a long period of time, and then you gradually over the years put that weight back on, it's more than likely that that weight regained will be fat mass rather than muscle mass, particularly if you're not strength training. And what that means is when we go through various cycles of losing and gaining and losing and gaining, we actually end up metabolically worse off than when we started. Our BMR could be negatively impacted as a result of that increase in fat mass and decrease in lean mass. I guess the other thing to mention around BMR is that as you age, this will eventually start to drop off. But this is much less drastic than most people think. The research we have tells us that really your BMR remains largely unchanged up until the age of about 60. And at that point, you're only really looking at roughly 1% every year. And again, this is good news if you're someone in their 30s, 40s, 50s, feeling like your metabolism has just naturally fallen off a cliff. It likely hasn't, and you can likely rectify it. Looking at NEAT, or non-exercise activity, this is potentially the biggest bang for its buck when it comes to that metabolic health and how to improve it. It's a pretty significant chunk of the overall circle, and it's actually super accessible for most people. Really, it's just about moving as much as you can, looking for opportunities to make something more active. If you work from a desk, standing up every hour and walking up and down the stairs, going out for a walk on your lunch break, getting up early to get a walk in. When you're traveling somewhere and you're getting on a bus, maybe you get off a stop earlier and walk the rest of the way. You're driving to the supermarket, you park in the furthest possible car parking space so you get that walk to the front door. All of these things might seem small, but I wish more people understood how much those small, consistent efforts add up over time. The thermic effect of food. This one, again, can be manipulated. Protein has the highest thermic effect of all macronutrients, meaning it takes more energy to break down a meal based around protein than it does a meal without. Also, there are some really interesting studies around the difference between whole foods and ultra-processed foods and their corresponding thermic effects. So when we look at whole foods, the thermic effect is much higher when compared to those highly processed alternatives, even when macros and calories are the same. Let's use an example of the humble cheese sandwich. You've got one multigrain bread, cheddar cheese sandwich on your left, and you've got another with white bread and those really quite yummy, like orange cheese squares. Let's say we've manipulated the amounts so that they are identical in terms of calories, protein, fats, and carbs. Both are 600 calories for the sake of an argument. There are studies that suggest the whole foods option burns up to twice as many calories as the ultra-processed option. The other element of this, which is kind of linked but not directly relevant, is that ultra-processed foods are much easier to overeat on. And in a lot of cases, if you look at an ultra-processed diet versus a whole foods diet, these people are going to be much more likely to overeat without even noticing, which can then lead to weight gain. And lastly, the smallest piece of the pie, but in my opinion, a very important one, exercise activity. Now you might be thinking, well, if it's such a small piece, why have I got to do it? I genuinely believe you cannot be a healthy human without some form of regular exercise in your life. As a body composition coach and someone who loves lifting weights, I'm obviously going to suggest that you start lifting weights regularly. I really do think it can benefit literally anyone and everyone, regardless of your start point, regardless of your age. But what I would say from a more holistic view is find some exercise that you enjoy, or worst case scenario, don't hate. I will take that if it means getting regular exercise into your lifestyle. If you're starting from zero, a couple of times a week is going to give you most of the benefits. Just start somewhere. If you're thinking about improving your metabolism, you don't need a detox or a reset or a step-by-step hacking procedure. You just need regular exercise, a diet that prioritizes protein and whole foods to move more in your daily life, and where possible, manage your sleep. New parents, I'm sorry, that one's not for you right now. But really, that is how you support a healthy metabolism for life. I hope this has been helpful, and thank you so much for joining me. Pop your questions in the comments, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Love you, bye!